And that's why I'd like to present this year's Innovation Award to David Taylor for his groundbreaking work on the Maxwell Protocol. The conference room erupted in applause. Everyone was standing, everyone except me. I watched him walk to the podium, that practiced humble smile on his face, his hand smoothing his perfectly ironed shirt as he stepped into the spotlight that should have been mine. My stomach wasn't just in knots. It felt like someone had reached inside and was slowly, deliberately, wringing it out like a wet towel. My name is Rachel Winters. And 3 months ago, David Taylor stole my life's work. Look, I know how this sounds. Another woman claiming a man took credit for her work. But stay with me. This isn't just about recognition. It's about what happened next. If you're wondering why you should listen to my story, let me put it this way. Have you ever had that moment when you realize the person everyone trusts is actually the most dangerous person in the room? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. The before. Rachel, you're overthinking this. Just send me what you have, and I'll look it over before the meeting. David's voice had that reassuring quality that made him everyone's favorite coworker at Nexus Technologies. I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the send button. The Maxwell Protocol wasn't just any project, it was my project. 18 months of late nights, missed weekends, canceled vacations. A revolutionary data integration system that could predict supply chain disruptions weeks before they happened. In an industry where even hours of advance notice meant millions saved, this was the holy grail. I don't know, David. It's still rough around the edges. I twisted a strand of hair around my finger, a nervous habit from childhood I'd never quite shaken. That's why I'm offering to review it. 2 heads are better than 1, right? He leaned against my cubicle wall, coffee mug in hand. Always the perfect colleague. That was David, the office golden boy. The kind of guy who remembered everyone's birthday, who brought donuts on Fridays, who stayed late to help the new intern with her first presentation. Everyone loved David, including me, and that was my first mistake that I sent him the file at 9:42 p.m. that night. I remember checking the time, thinking I should probably go home, wondering if he'd even look at it before tomorrow's department meeting. He responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Just that. Nothing else. The next morning, I grabbed coffee on my way in, mentally rehearsing how I'd pitch the Maxwell Protocol to our director. This was it, my chance to finally move up from senior analyst to project lead. After 5 years of watching others get promoted around me, it was finally my turn. I walked into the conference room 3 minutes late. Everyone was already seated, including David, who was standing at the front of the room, clicker in hand, my slides projected on the screen behind him, except they weren't exactly my slides anymore. As I was explaining to Janet, David nodded toward our director. The Maxwell Protocol represents a fundamental shift in how we approach data integration. My coffee cup slipped from my hand. The hot liquid splashed across my shoes, but I barely noticed. Because David was presenting my work, my exact algorithms, my exact methodology, as if it was his own creation, and based on Janet's enthusiastic nodding, she was buying every word of it. The betrayal. The thing about having your work stolen isn't the immediate shock, it's the paralyzing confusion that follows. That moment when your brain frantically cycles through possibilities. Did I misunderstand something? Did we agree he would present it? Did I somehow steal his idea without realizing it? I stood frozen at the doorway while David continued, his voice confident, compelling. The real breakthrough came when I realized we could use recursive neural networks to identify patterns that traditional analytics miss, he said, pointing to a diagram, my diagram, that had taken me 3 weeks to perfect. Janet looked impressed. This is exceptional work, David. I finally found my voice. Actually, David caught my eye and smoothly cut in. Rachel helped compile some of the initial data. I should have acknowledged that earlier. He flashed me that collegial smile. Great job with that, Rachel. Some of the initial data? My hands started to shake. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words stuck in my throat. Because everyone was looking at me now, David with that friendly warning in his eyes, Janet with mild confusion, and my colleagues with varying degrees of sympathy and secondhand embarrassment. Speaking up meant creating a scene. It meant accusing the office favorite of theft with no proof. It meant becoming that person, bitter, jealous, difficult to work with. So instead, I picked up my empty coffee cup from the floor, mumbled something about getting paper towels, and walked out. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the wall for hours. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Great meeting today. Let's grab lunch tomorrow to discuss next steps." Next steps? The audacity was breathtaking. I should have confronted him immediately. I should have gone straight to Janet with evidence, the emails, the timestamps on my files, the months of documentation. But shock makes you hesitate. And hesitation gives manipulators exactly what they need: time to solidify their story. By the next day, David had already emailed the entire department about his breakthrough. He'd CC'd senior leadership, scheduled follow-up meetings, and positioned himself as the point person for the Maxwell protocol. "It's a bit more complex than I initially presented," he told me over lunch, waving his fork casually. "Janet wouldn't have understood the technical details coming from you. She respects me. This way, your work still gets implemented." The worst part? He genuinely seemed to believe he'd done me a favor. "Besides," he added, lowering his voice, "between us, I refined your approach significantly. What you sent me was, well, let's just say it needed work." That moment, watching him rewrite history in real time, with such practiced ease, was when I realized I wasn't dealing with an opportunist. I was dealing with a predator. Someone who had done this before and would absolutely do it again. When the company newsletter came out the following week featuring David as Innovation Leader of the Quarter, I wasn't even surprised. When he was selected to present the Maxwell Protocol at the annual industry conference, I felt nothing but a cold, clarifying anger, because by then, I had noticed something crucial. David could present my work, but he didn't actually understand it. The discovery: have you ever watched someone try to explain something they don't actually comprehend? There's a particular rhythm to it. They start confidently with memorized talking points, but when questioned about specifics, they get vague. They redirect. They use impressive-sounding jargon to mask fundamental misunderstandings. Over the next few weeks, I watched David do exactly this. In meetings, he'd brilliantly present the overview of the Maxwell protocol, but stumble when engineers asked detailed questions. He'd defer technical discussions to another time or claim certain aspects were still being optimized. "Rachel, quick question." He'd message me afterward. "Can you send me notes on how the tertiary validation sequence works again? Just want to make sure I'm explaining it correctly to the dev team." Translation: he had no idea how it worked. At first, I helped him, partly out of habit, partly because I still cared about the project itself. I still wanted the Maxwell protocol to succeed, even if I wouldn't get credit for it, but each time I explained something, he'd absorb just enough to sound knowledgeable in the next meeting before inevitably hitting another wall. His technical understanding was a house of cards, and it was only a matter of time before it collapsed. That's when I started keeping receipts. Every email where he asked basic questions about the system he supposedly invented. Every meeting recording where he dodged technical inquiries. Every inconsistency in how he described the protocol's functionality. 3 weeks before the annual conference, where David would present his innovation to the entire industry, including our competitors, Janet called an all-hands meeting to review progress. "David will be representing Nexus on the main stage," she announced proudly. "This is the biggest platform our company has had in years, so we need to make sure the presentation is flawless." I sat in the back of the room, my laptop open to an email I'd received that morning. The conference organizers had reached out to me directly. Apparently, David had listed me as the technical resource for the presentation. They needed answers to some preliminary questions about the Maxwell protocol that David had been too busy to address. Janet continued, "The board members will all be there, along with potential investors and partners. David, you'll have 45 minutes to demonstrate how the system works in real time." I watched the color drain from David's face. "Real time?" he repeated. I was thinking more of a conceptual overview. Janet shook her head. No, the technical team has set up a live environment. You'll be running actual scenarios to show how the system identifies and predicts supply chain disruptions. David's eyes found mine across the room, a flash of panic before he regained his composure. Of course, he said smoothly. That's even better. But I knew. And now he knew that I knew. After the meeting, he cornered me by the elevators. You need to handle the technical setup for the conference, he whispered urgently. I'll do the talking, but you need to make sure everything works. I looked at him for a long moment. Why would I do that, David? He blinked rapidly. Because we're a team. Because this is your project too. Is it? That's not what the company newsletter says. His friendly mask slipped, just for a second. Don't be petty, Rachel. This is bigger than either of us. If the presentation fails, we all look bad. You mean you look bad? I can make sure you get acknowledged in the presentation, he offered, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. I'll mention your contribution. My contribution. To my own creation, I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd had in weeks. I'll think about it. The Reckoning. The annual conference was held at the Grand Hyatt downtown, all glass and chrome and self-importance. I arrived early, wearing the navy suit I'd bought specifically for occasions like this, the ones I rarely got invited to. The main ballroom was already half full. Industry leaders, tech journalists, competitors, all there to see the next big innovation. To see David Taylor present the Maxwell Protocol, I spotted him near the stage, surrounded by executives. He was working the room masterfully, laughing, shaking hands, exuding confidence. But I caught how his eyes kept darting nervously to the laptop set up for the demonstration. Janet waved me over. Rachel, good to see you supporting the team. David was just saying how helpful you've been with the technical aspects. Has he? I smiled. David's always been generous with credit. David shot me a warning look. Rachel helped with some of the data processing. I've actually been making last-minute adjustments to improve the algorithm. I raised an eyebrow. Really? What kind of adjustments? Technical optimizations, he said vaguely. Nothing that changes the core functionality. Janet was called away by a board member, leaving us alone. Are we good? David asked quietly, straightening his presentation clicker. Did you set everything up like I asked? I nodded. Everything's ready to go. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I knew you'd do the right thing. Did you? I watched his expression carefully. You know what's interesting about the Maxwell Protocol, David? It's built on trust. The entire system depends on accurate, honest data inputs. If someone enters false information, the whole thing fails. He frowned. What are you saying? I'm saying integrity matters in systems and in people. Before he could respond, Janet returned to announce they were ready to begin. The lights dimmed as people found their seats. David took the stage to enthusiastic applause. I sat in the front row, my laptop open, watching. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice confident, practiced. Today, I'm going to show you the future of supply chain analytics. The Maxwell Protocol represents months of my work developing a system that can predict disruptions before they occur. I let him go on for about 10 minutes. Let him bask in the attention, the admiration, the nods of approval from the executives. Let him dig himself deeper. Then came the demonstration portion. Now, I'll show you the system in action, David said, turning to the large screen behind him. We've loaded real-world data from the past 6 months. The Maxwell Protocol will analyze this data and predict which suppliers are likely to experience disruptions in the coming weeks. He clicked a button, and the system began running, except it didn't show what he expected. Instead of the carefully sanitized demonstration data, the screen displayed my complete development timeline of the Maxwell Protocol. My original notes. My emails to David asking for feedback. His responses. The timestamps showing I'd completed the work months before his breakthrough. And most damning of all, his increasingly desperate messages to me over the past weeks, revealing his complete lack of understanding of how the system actually worked. The room went absolutely silent. David stared at the screen in horror. "There's been some mistake," he stammered. "This isn't—" "Actually," I said, standing up, "this is exactly the Maxwell protocol at work. It's designed to identify false claims in a supply chain, to find where someone is taking credit for work they didn't do." I walked toward the stage, feeling surprisingly calm. "Would you like me to explain how it actually works, David? Or should I?" His face contorted with anger and humiliation. "You set me up." "No," I corrected him, my voice carrying through the silent room. "I just created a system that exposes fraud. That's what the Maxwell protocol really does, it reveals the truth." Janet was on her feet now, confusion and anger battling on her face. "What is going on here?" "I think Rachel should take over the presentation," said a voice from the back, one of the senior engineers who had always seen through David's technical hand-waving. "I'd like to hear about this system from its actual creator." David looked desperately around the room, finding no allies. "This is unprofessional," he tried. "This is the most authentic demonstration we could have asked for," interrupted a board member from the front row. "The system works exactly as advertised. It identifies false claims in the supply chain, including, apparently, false claims of authorship." Security didn't escort David out. That only happens in movies. Instead, he had to sit there, in the front row, and watch as I gave the presentation he had prepared for but could never deliver. I explained every nuance of the Maxwell protocol, not just what it did, but how and why. I answered technical questions he would have fumbled. I demonstrated features he didn't even know existed. By the end, there was no question in anyone's mind who had created the system. The aftermath, the standing ovation wasn't for me, not really. It was for the Maxwell protocol itself, for what it could do, for how it would transform the industry. But I was the one receiving it, and after months of watching from the sidelines, the vindication was overwhelming. Afterward, Janet found me by the refreshment table. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. I shook my head. "You believed what you were meant to believe." "David is very convincing." "Not anymore." Her expression was grim. "We'll be conducting a full review of his contributions to other projects as well." David didn't return to the office the next day or the day after. When he finally did, it was to clean out his desk, his resignation already submitted. He didn't look at me as he left for the last time. The Innovation Award ceremony was held 2 weeks later. When they called my name, the applause felt different than I'd imagined it would all those months ago. Less triumphant, more thoughtful. Because everyone in that room was thinking the same thing. How many other Rachels were out there, watching someone else receive acclaim for their work? As I took the small crystal trophy, my name correctly etched into its base, I thought about what to say. There were so many emotions: anger at having to fight for recognition that should have been freely given, satisfaction at the justice finally served, lingering bitterness that it had happened at all. But standing there, looking out at my colleagues, some who had doubted me, others who had suspected the truth but said nothing, I realized something important. This story wasn't just about me and David. It was about systems that allow theft to happen, about workplace cultures that value confidence over competence, about the quiet innovators whose ideas shape our world while others take the credit. "Thank you," I said finally. "This award recognizes more than just the Maxwell protocol. It recognizes the importance of integrity in our work. Because innovation doesn't just require intelligence, it requires honesty. And sometimes, it requires courage to stand up and say, 'This is mine.'" I placed the award on my desk when I returned to my newly assigned office, project lead, finally. I don't look at it much. What matters more are the emails I've received since that conference, from junior team members feeling empowered to speak up in meetings, from other women in tech sharing similar experiences, from company leaders asking how to build more transparent attribution systems. David. I heard he found another position at a smaller firm across the country. Sometimes I wonder if he's learned his lesson or if he's just gotten better at covering his tracks. I hope it's the former, but I suspect it's the latter. As for me, I've started mentoring young analysts, teaching them not just how to innovate, but how to protect their innovations. How to document their work, how to speak up, How to recognize the warning signs I missed. Because the Maxwell Protocol isn't just a system for predicting supply chain disruptions. It's become something much more important, a reminder that in a world where ideas are currency, we must vigilantly guard against those who would steal them. And sometimes, the most satisfying revenge isn't just reclaiming what's yours. It's watching someone try to explain your creation when they don't even understand how to use it. If you've ever had your work stolen, your voice silenced, your contributions minimized, know this: receipts matter. Documentation matters. And sometimes, when you set the right trap, justice finds its way back to you. Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life workplace experiences that most people are too afraid to share.